We grow up being taught that life is serious business, that every decision is a test, every mistake a stain, every achievement a step toward some invisible finish line we are expected to reach. Most people carry this weight for decades, without ever stopping long enough to ask a simple question: is this really what life is? Or have we mistaken the role we're playing for who we really are? Imagine for a moment that all of this, the routines, the ambitions, the heartbreaks, the victories, the identities we cling to, is not the ultimate truth of existence, but a sophisticated game we stepped into, and then forgot was a game. A child never forgets they're playing. They can become a pirate, a doctor, a wizard, a monster. They throw themselves into each role completely, but the moment someone calls them for dinner, they drop the identity without hesitation. They don't mourn the pirate. They don't fear losing the wizard. They simply shift, fluid, weightless, free. But somewhere along the line, that natural freedom hardened. We began to treat our temporary identities, our jobs, our reputations, our successes and failures, as if they were eternal. We became so good at pretending that we forgot we were pretending. The role swallowed the actor. The mask convinced the face beneath it that the mask was real. And that was the moment the game stopped being play and became suffering. Because suffering always begins the moment you take something meant to be temporary and mistake it for who you are. The first truth of this game is unsettling, almost disorienting. You are not the character you play. You are not your name, your history, your personality, your anxieties, your dreams, or your wounds. These belong to the character. But you, the one who notices these things, you are the player. You are the awareness behind the thoughts, the silent witness behind your emotions, the space in which every experience arises and fades. Most people never discover this distinction, and so they spend their entire lives believing they are the costume instead of the consciousness trying it on. But once you begin to sense even faintly that you are the one watching rather than the one performing, everything softens. Life stops pressing so heavily on your chest. The stakes stop feeling so catastrophic. The moment you realize you're the player, the game stops being a prison and becomes an exploration. Think of it like waking up inside a dream. When you're dreaming and you don't realize it, everything feels absolute. The monster chasing you is terrifying. The conflict is real. The danger is suffocating. But the instant you become lucid, the entire atmosphere transforms. The monster is still there, but now it's just part of the dreamscape. You can interact with it, observe it, even learn from it. In that moment, you discover something powerful. The dream was never against you. It was always you. Life is similar. The difficulties, the antagonists, the obstacles, they appear hostile only when you believe you are a fragile character inside a threatening world. But when you recognize yourself as the player, the world reorganizes itself. Challenges become levels. Mistakes become information. Change becomes movement. And emotions, especially the ones we try so hard to avoid, become signals rather than punishments. Here's another rule most people never learn. The game was never designed to be won. You cannot complete life like a checklist. You cannot outrun uncertainty. You cannot perfect the character. And you cannot earn the right to stop playing. Life is not a race to the end. It is an unfolding performance meant to be lived now, in each breath, in each scene, in each unexpected twist. Yet most of us live as if the point is to get somewhere else. We rush through our youth to reach adulthood. We rush through work hoping for retirement, and then one day we sit quietly wondering where all those years went. The tragedy is not that life is short. The tragedy is that so many people live only for the next stage of the game and never for the stage they're actually in. You are not meant to reach a final destination. You are meant to participate fully in the moment you're inside. Not tomorrow, not years from now, now. Because the game is always being played now. The past is memory. The future is imagination. But the present, that strange, fleeting, living edge of awareness, is the only place where anything real ever happens. Yet most people are rarely present. They live inside thinking, inside forecasting, inside regretting. They walk through life like spectators reading the program notes at a concert while the music is playing right in front of them. They miss the melody because they think understanding the structure matters more than hearing the song. But the game happens in sensation, not in analysis. It happens in experience, not in commentary. And here's a secret few people realize: the game is rigged entirely in your favor. Not because nothing painful will happen, pain is built into the design, but because nothing that happens can ever touch what you truly are. Pain can touch the character. Loss can touch the character. Fear, doubt, uncertainty, heartbreak. These are real parts of the human storyline. But the player cannot be harmed by the story. Just as an actor is untouched by the tragedy of the role they're playing, the awareness that you are remains whole, intact, and untouched behind every experience. When you start to understand this, something remarkable happens. You stop taking everything so personally. The criticism someone throws at you becomes just another line in the script. The rejection becomes a plot point rather than a verdict. The unexpected change becomes a new chapter instead of a disaster. And challenges, especially the ones that disrupt your comfort, become invitations. Invitations to grow, to shift roles, to evolve your style of play. Life begins to feel less like punishment and more like improvisation. Less like a burden and more like participation. Less like something happening to you and more like something happening through you. But perhaps the most beautiful rule of the game is this: you can always change how you play. No matter your past, no matter the mistakes, no matter how many years you spent identifying with the character. The player can wake up at any moment. The player can choose again. The player can start over right now. And the moment you remember you're the player, the story opens in ways the character could never imagine. Because the player is not confined by who they were yesterday. They can adapt. They can shift. They can grow. The character is limited by identity. The player is not. And that simple realization, the remembering of who you truly are, is the moment the game begins to reveal its deeper nature. A nature far more generous, far more intelligent, and far more astonishing than the character could ever perceive. The game is not here to defeat you. It is here to wake you up. Most people believe that life becomes easier once they finally figure it out. Once they master their habits, stabilize their emotions, earn the right achievements, or gather enough wisdom to stop being surprised. But the truth is almost the opposite. Life becomes lighter only when you stop insisting that you must understand everything before you live it. The character seeks certainty. The player seeks participation. And the moment you shift from the character to the player, the world stops being a puzzle to solve and becomes a landscape to move through. But there is a deeper layer to this game, one that takes most people years, sometimes entire lifetimes, to realize. It's this: the game responds to the way you play it. Not metaphorically, not poetically, quite literally. The attitude with which you meet life determines the shape life takes when it meets you. Fear shrinks the world. Curiosity opens it. Resistance tightens the storyline. Acceptance lets it flow. You have been conditioned to believe that life is something happening outside of you, moving toward you in fixed form, as if events were predetermined and your only job was to react. But the game of life is not passive like that. It is participatory, interactive, alive. Your awareness is not merely watching reality, it is generating it. Not in the sense of magically controlling every outcome, but in the sense that the quality of your inner state influences the texture of the reality you experience. Two people can walk into the same room and live entirely different worlds. One sees hostility, judgment, danger. The other sees possibilities, connection, warmth. The room hasn't changed. The players have. And the game responds accordingly. This is why learning to see yourself as the player and not the frightened character is the most powerful shift you can make. Because players act from awareness, not fear. They move from presence, not habit. They respond from clarity, not conditioning. Consider this: the character lives inside the story. The player lives inside the awareness of the story. The character says, "This is happening to me." The player says, "This is happening in me." The character grasps for control. The player allows movement. The character clings to identity. The player flows with experience. And the more you remember you're the player, the more fluid life becomes. You stop needing to freeze yourself into one fixed version. You stop needing to prove your worth through outcomes. You stop needing to be right, admired, validated, or understood. You begin to let life happen without the tight grip of fear. And something extraordinary occurs when that grip loosens. Your natural intelligence awakens. Not the kind of intelligence measured by knowledge or logic, but the deeper, intuitive intelligence that knows how to move through the world without effort. Watch water flowing around rocks in a stream. It doesn't resist, doesn't argue, doesn't fear the obstacle. It simply adjusts, finds another path, and continues without losing its essential nature. When you remember you're the player, you move the same way. You stop treating every difficulty as an attack. You stop interpreting every setback as failure. You stop assuming that life is punishing you. Instead, you see that the game introduces resistance. For the same reason weights exist in a gym, not to defeat you, but to strengthen what is already inside you. And the moment you stop fighting the resistance, you begin to grow from it. But suffering appears the moment we cling. Clinging is the character's favorite pastime. The character clings to preferences, to roles, to expectations, to past versions of themselves. It believes consistency equals safety. But consistency is not safety, it is stagnation. Life is movement. The game changes shape constantly. So must you. Real authenticity does not mean staying the same. It means remaining true to the awareness behind every role, no matter what role you're asked to play. In one moment, you may need to be strong. In another, gentle. In one moment, disciplined. In another, flexible. In one moment, precise. In another, spontaneous. The character panics when asked to change roles. The player simply switches costumes. And this fluidity, this freedom to shift, reveals a profound truth about the game. Your identity is not fixed. It is chosen, re-chosen, and infinitely adjustable. You do not owe your past self your future. You do not owe yesterday's fears the authority to direct tomorrow's actions. You are under no obligation to remain the person you were 5 minutes ago. Life offers you the gift of reinvention constantly, but the character rarely accepts it. The character tries to be predictable. The player tries to be present. This is why children are naturally great players. Their identities are soft, flexible, playful. They can be an astronaut at 9 hours, a tiger at 9:05, a dancer at 9:10. They shift effortlessly because they have not yet been taught the oppressive seriousness of identity. They haven't forgotten the game. Adults, however, are burdened with the illusion that identity must be consistent. But consistency is a prison. The more you try to preserve a rigid self-image, the more tension you create. The player dissolves this tension by remembering you are not here to protect an identity. You are here to experience a life. And that means learning, growing, changing, stumbling, rising, and evolving, all of which require flexibility, not rigidity. Another secret of the game: you are never playing alone. Every person you meet is another expression of the same consciousness wearing a different mask. This is why compassion arises naturally when you remember the game. Not a forced compassion that tries to be morally impressive, but a quiet, effortless compassion that comes from seeing yourself in everyone. That difficult coworker, another character playing their role. That stranger who smiled at you on a difficult day, another spark of the same awareness shining through a different face. That person who hurt you years ago. A painful chapter that shaped the player you became. You do not have to approve of every role others play, but recognizing the shared awareness underneath softens the heart. It makes forgiveness feel less like sacrifice and more like truth, because you realize you have never been separate in the way you believed. Everyone is navigating their own storyline. Everyone is carrying their own fears, Everyone is trying to understand a game they forgot they were playing. Their identity is just as fragile, just as temporary, and just as mistaken as yours once was. And this insight, this remembering of oneness, changes how you move. You stop competing. You stop resenting. You stop needing to win at someone else's expense. The game becomes cooperative rather than adversarial. And paradoxically, when you stop competing, life starts aligning with you. Not because of magic, but because you are no longer generating inner conflict that spills into your outer world. The player plays with clarity. The character plays with fear. And the game always reflects the one who is playing. Perhaps the most liberating discovery you can make is this: there are no mistakes in this game, only moves. Some moves generate outcomes you enjoy. Some generate lessons you needed. Some open new paths. Some close old ones. But every move is part of your evolution. Children know this intuitively. They do not call it failure when they fall learning to walk. They simply stand up again and try from a slightly different angle. They learn not through judgment, but through play. Somewhere along the way, adults lose this wisdom. We label every stumble as evidence of inadequacy. We gather mistakes like reasons to hate ourselves. We forget that learning requires imperfection. But the player remembers. The player sees every mistake as information, every heartbreak as expansion, every disappointment as redirection, every ending as transition, and every moment, especially the ones that hurt, as invitations to deepen awareness. Pain happens. Suffering is optional. Pain belongs to the character. Suffering is the story we attach to the pain. And players do not cling to stories, they flow through them. The more you release your grip on the story, the more reality relaxes around you. Suddenly, life feels less like a test and more like a dance. Less like a threat and more like a conversation. Less like a burden and more like movement. The game reveals its generosity only when you stop fighting its design. And once you remember you're the player, not the character, you begin to see the deeper architecture of the game unfolding around you, a structure far more elegant, intelligent, and compassionate than you ever imagined. And the next rule, perhaps the most surprising one, is what we move into next. There is a moment, quiet, subtle, almost imperceptible, when the player finally understands one of the deepest truths of this entire game. The rules are not fixed. They bend, shift, and reorganize themselves, depending on how you choose to meet each moment. Most games in the world are rigid. They punish deviation. They limit creativity. They confine the player to narrow lanes. But the game of life is the opposite. It rewards those who become flexible. It expands for those who stay curious. It transforms for those who refuse to be defined by what came before. And perhaps the most startling revelation is this: the game evolves in response to your inner stance. If you approach life with suspicion, you will find reasons to be suspicious. If you approach it with defensiveness, the world will feel hostile. But if you approach it with openness, the world begins to unfold in ways you never noticed before. The shift is subtle at first. A conversation feels lighter than it used to. A task you once avoided becomes strangely manageable. A situation you feared reveals an unexpected opportunity. And slowly you begin to see that the quality of the world you experience is a reflection of the quality of awareness you bring into it. Not because you control reality, but because you participate in shaping the lens through which reality appears. This is where the game becomes truly magical. Not magical in the sense of fantasy, but magical in the sense of depth. Life responds to sincerity. It responds to consciousness. It responds to presence. When you stop fighting the moment and the moment stops fighting you. When you stop needing to control everything, life begins to meet you halfway. This is the art of non-resistance. Non-resistance is not passivity. It is not giving up. It is not pretending everything is fine. Non-resistance is the simple act of allowing reality to be what it is without adding the weight of your internal struggle. Pain happens, but suffering, the tightness, the story, the fear arises from resistance. When you remove the resistance, pain becomes workable. Life becomes workable. You become workable. And something unexpected emerges: clarity. The player sees clearly. The character sees through the haze of fear. When clarity returns, you begin to recognize the hidden invitations tucked inside every difficult moment. A closed door is not rejection, it is redirection. A conflict is not punishment, it is contrast. A loss is not failure, it is space being created for what could not enter before. The character reacts, the player reads the moment. And the more you read the moment without judgment, the more the moment reveals its intelligence. There is an intelligence built into this game, far older and wiser than your individual personality. Call it nature, call it consciousness, call it the deeper order of life. It doesn't matter what word you use. What matters is recognizing that you are part of this intelligence, not separate from it. The player is not navigating the world alone. The player is being guided quietly, consistently by currents of intuition, synchronicity, insight, and timing. But you cannot sense these currents when you are drowning in mental noise. You sense them when you soften, when you listen, when you stop forcing outcomes and begin cooperating with the unfolding of life. This is the moment the game starts feeling less like a struggle and more like a conversation. Less like pushing and more like aligning. Less like survival and more like participation. You realize you were never meant to carry everything alone. You were meant to dance with the moment, not overpower it. To work with life, not against it. And in this cooperation, the game offers its next gift, the release of control. Control is the character's illusion of safety. But real safety does not come from control. Real safety comes from connection with yourself, with the moment, with the awareness beneath all experience. When you release control, you make space for clarity to emerge, for perspectives to shift, for new pathways to reveal themselves. You stop forcing life to match your expectations and begin allowing life to show you possibilities you could not have imagined. But perhaps the hardest lesson of the game is this: suffering often arises not because life is cruel, but because you resist the role you're being asked to play. You want a different chapter, a different character arc, a different timing. But the game gives you what you need before it gives you what you want. And when you stop resisting the role, you begin to play it well. A difficult chapter becomes a training ground. A quiet season becomes a sanctuary. A loss becomes an awakening. A setback becomes a shaping. And the moment you surrender, not as defeat, but as cooperation, a different kind of strength emerges. The strength that does not rely on force, but on alignment. The strength that does not come from the character, but from the player. And with that strength comes peace. Peace is not the absence of problems. Peace is the absence of identification with the problems. Problems belong to the character. Awareness belongs to the player. And the deeper you settle into awareness, the more untouchable you become, not because life stops challenging you, but because challenges no longer threaten your identity. They simply move through the space of your awareness, the way weather moves through the sky. The sky does not cling to storms. It does not resist the rain. It does not fear the clouds. It allows everything and loses nothing. Awareness is the sky. Experience is the weather. When you remember this, a profound softness enters your life. You stop clinging to what must leave. You stop fearing what must arrive. You stop trying to control what was never meant to be controlled. And life in return becomes lighter, kinder, more spacious. But perhaps the most surprising rule of the game, the one players spend lifetimes approaching, is this: you cannot lose. Not because everything will go your way, not because pain will never touch you, but because the one who is playing cannot be harmed by the story being played. The character dies. The player does not. The character changes. The player remains. The character suffers. The player experiences. When this truth sinks in, not intellectually, but viscerally, you stop fearing the endings. You stop obsessing over outcomes. You stop clinging to roles that no longer fit. Death itself stops being a terror. You realize it is simply costume change, set change, scene change, consciousness shedding one story so it may slip into another. The game continues, always. The story shifts, but the awareness watching the story is eternal. This is why ancient teachers called life a dream, not to dismiss its beauty or importance, but to remind you that its impermanence is what makes it precious. You are here to play fully, not fearfully, to engage deeply, not cling tightly, to love without possession, to live without obsession, to feel without drowning, to fail without collapsing, to rise without arrogance, to let life move through you as easily as breath moves through the body. And when you live this way, lightly, consciously, playfully, something extraordinary happens. The game becomes joyful. Not because circumstances are perfect, but because you remember who you are inside them. You remember that you are both the witness and the participant, both the actor and the awareness watching the actor, both the dreamer and the dream. And with this remembering, the fear dissolves. The heaviness lifts. The world feels intimate again, not as an enemy to outsmart, but as a partner, inviting you deeper into the mystery of being alive. And so whenever life starts to feel unbearably serious, whenever the weight of your story becomes too heavy to carry, pause. Breathe. And remember, you are not the struggling character trying to survive a hostile universe. You are the universe itself playing at being a struggling character. You are the player. You are the awareness. You are the one behind the mask, behind the storyline, behind the ever-changing scenes of your life. The game is not punishing you. It is inviting you to wake up, to participate fully, to loosen your grip, to play with a light touch, to remember the joy in simply being alive. And whenever you forget, just ask yourself one question: am I the character right now, or the player? Each time you ask, you remember. Each time you remember, the game opens. And when the game opens, life becomes what it was always meant to be. Not a burden, not a punishment, not a test, but a magnificent cosmic play in which you are both the actor and the awareness watching the act unfold. The game never ends. It only changes form. And you, the player, move with it endlessly, effortlessly, eternally.